Brazil and the United States stand side by side in their efforts to ensure liberties and respect to traditional family lifestyles, respect to God, our Creator, against the gender ideology or the politically correct attitudes, and against fake news.
The incredible thing is that we can win an election and we have such a stacked deck. I'm very proud to hear the president use the term fake news.
Brooke, the thing that has to be noted, and we'd be remiss if we didn't note it, is that when the president of Brazil mentioned the term fake news, he got sort of a smile and a nod from President Trump. And you know, this is something that we've seen since President Trump came into office, called this network fake news, has referred to the press as the enemy of the people and so on, is that this is a virus.
If there was a country south of the equator that were to rival the United States, Russia, and China in terms of global influence, it would have to be Brazil. Despite recovering from a recent recession, it is host to the 8th largest economy in the world, and the largest in South America proper, making most of its export money off of soybeans. But it also sells a good deal of iron ore, crude petroleum, cars, and airplanes. It's the home of the Embraer E-Jet. It's also the largest producer of coffee in the world, making about a third of all coffee ever. Brazil is a noticeably large country, but the overwhelming majority of its population is based in urban centers along the eastern shore. Brasilia, the capital, is located a bit further inland with a population of 4 million people, just a bit more populated than Los Angeles. The most populated city in the US, New York City, is home to a little under 8 million. Rio de Janeiro is home to 13 million. And that's just the second most populated city in Brazil. Sao Paulo is the biggest, at 21 million. Brazil is big. It exports big, it builds big, and it parties big. Brazil is the second largest consumer of cocaine in the world, and it's a big market for Colombian, Bolivian, and Peruvian cartels. These cities exist in flat, low-elevation parts of land. On the east is the coast, and surrounding the rest are miles and miles of towering, mountainous terrain. Keep going west, and you end up in the Amazon rainforest. Not exactly the easiest place to live for humans. Brazil makes a good deal of money off of farming, but it is actually cheaper to ship products by boat through Brazil's snaking waterways into the Rio de la Plata, forming the border between Argentina and Uruguay. Brazil shares this region with Argentina for trading purposes, and it needs this agreement because it's impossible to ship as much as it does by truck over the mountains and into its port cities. There is a part of these river routes that is a point of attention for the intelligence agencies of many countries. It's called the Triple Frontier. A joint coalition was put together in 2002 called the 3+1 Group. Its members consist of the 3 bordering countries there: Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil, and the +1, the United States. A range of claims have been made about this region's harboring of terrorist training cells, but what is more actively discussed is the money laundering that goes on here, specifically the Lebanese Islamic nationalist group, Hezbollah. Between that, the crisis in Venezuela that has prompted the arrival of over 100,000 Venezuelan refugees, smuggling across its borders of guns and narcotics, and violent crime in the cities, Tropical Trump has a lot on his plate.
From President Trump, and you know, this is something that we've seen since President Trump came into office, called this network fake news, has referred to the press as the enemy of the people and so on, is that this is a virus.
O que você acha do Bolsonaro?
Para ele quer acabar com o tráfico. Quer acabar com o tráfico é uma coisa que é impossível nesse mundo.
Eu tenho o tráfico de droga, a cocaína. Hoje em dia eu não considero mais como um vício. Ela é um vírus. Ela é um vírus que estourou no país todo. Quem não usa a cocaína depende dela para sobreviver.
This guy is part of Third Command, a cartel based in North and West Rio that separated from the originally politically motivated rebel group, Red Command, in the 1980s. Cartels fight for power and influence amongst each other in favelas like this one, Rocinha, located in South Rio. Members of cartels hide in these densely packed places and blend into their environments. They provide security and sometimes money to their neighbors to get on their good side. But the average person is often caught in the crossfire of territorial wars between cartels and the police trying to quell them. A former army captain, devout Catholic, and staunch conservative, Bolsonaro has some controversial solutions to address this issue. One of Bolsonaro's major campaign promises was to loosen restrictions on civilian gun ownership. He enacted the policy just about as soon as he got into office.
In order to guarantee the citizens this legitimate right of defense, I, as president, will use this weapon.
The Special Police Operations Battalion is one of them. With the striking power of a sledgehammer and the precision of a scalpel, these men are specialists, assigned to the most high-profile and high-risk situations in the city of Rio. They're either iron-hearted crusaders defending Rio from chaos, or a government-sanctioned death squad. They're at the forefront of so-called pacification efforts, coordinated missions to oust cartels from the favelas of Rio. The ethics of their results are argued heavily. The non-profit human rights group Amnesty International stated that the police forces in Brazil adopt violent and repressive methods, and they cause violations of fundamental rights of large parts of the population on a regular basis. The current administration doesn't particularly care about these claims. And frankly, neither do Rio's cops. Being a cop in Rio is one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. Casualty rates are high. Regular military police are armed typically with a pattern of European light automatic rifles that, while sturdy and reliable, have been considered outdated since the end of the Cold War. With a force of 45,000 employees, the PMERS has sustained over 17,500 casualties from 1994 to 2016. Pacification does move gangs out of their territory, but it's hard to snuff them out completely. Little is known about the leadership structure of Red Command, the most powerful gang in Rio, but at one point they controlled 50% of its most violent parts. Their territory has been scaled back by pacification and rivalries with other gangs. Everyone wants a piece of the pie.
Falta ainda bastante coisa, tem muito trabalho para ser feito. Nas comunidades que não são pacificadas, qualquer hora que uma viatura da polícia chegar a tentar entrar, ela vai ser recebida a tiro, com certeza. Com certeza.
Freedom will liberate this country. Freedom will turn us into a great nation. The truth will shine and will guide us as it has guided us all along and will continue to guide us. What has happened today in the elections is not the victory of a single party, but the celebration of an entire country in favor of freedom.
Boas-vindas com a frase: não faça movimentos bruscos.
Bom dia! Caveira! Caveira!
Bolsonaro doesn't have a filter, and it's an apt comparison. In 2003, at Brazil's Chamber of Deputies, he got into an argument with Federal Deputy Maria de Rosario, accusing her of defending a rapist in court. Her response was followed by a vitriolic retort.
Mas isso pra você que você não merece.
Olha, eu espero que não, senão eu dou-lhe uma boa.
Dá, eu te dou outra. Dá que eu te dou outra. Dá que eu te dou outra. Dá que eu te dou outra.
In an interview he conducted with Vice News in 2016, he said, "I don't regret anything."
Não, vagabunda.
Mas o que é isso? O que é isso aqui? O que é isso aqui? O que é isso aqui? Desequilibrado! O que é isso,
Vai dizer agora que
desequilibrado?
você é uma coitada agora.
Mas o que é isso?
Bolsonaro has also defended the military dictatorship that ruled over Brazil over the course of the 60s and 80s. He has no good feelings about communists, and he's repeatedly stated that more of them in Chile should have been killed by Augusto Pinochet, who was infamous for his practice of having political dissidents thrown out of helicopters over the Pacific Ocean. He doesn't have flattering comments to say about people in the LGBT community either. If one's son begins acting kind of gay, then when he is spanked, he'll change his behavior, he says. He conducted an interview with renowned English actor and writer Stephen Fry, who in a TV show he presented sought to explore the dynamics of gay life in various parts of the world, including Brazil.
A number of right-wing Christian groups support him in this, including some neo-Nazi groups. Though it may be a struggle, I'm determined to keep my cool with him.
I'm sure you remember the case of Alexandre, who was killed, 15 years old, and he was tortured. And the police and everybody involved in the case believes it was a case of a homophobic attack. It seems to me there is something deeply wrong in Brazilian society, that such hatred, every other day, apparently, there's a homophobic killing in Brazil.
A questão da opção sexual dele, mas se inclui na opção sexual porque passa a ser uma bandeira para grupos homossexuais, dizendo que matam e executam, mas eles não querem discutir. Não existe homofobia no Brasil. A maioria dos que morrem, 90% dos homossexuais que morrem, eles morrem em local de consumo de drogas,
But if you don't know Portuguese, it would seem difficult to find anything concerning Bolsonaro's efforts to change public policy in regards to the LGBT community. But he's not the focal point of LGBT politics in Brazil. That title belonged to Marielle Franco, councillor of Rio de Janeiro from 2017 to 2018. She was seen by many living in the favelas as a champion for their rights, and she also tried to pass legislation raising awareness of LGBT communities in Brazil. On the 14th of March, 2018, while on the way back home after giving a speech, she and her driver were shot and killed in their car by gunmen. As recently as March of 2019, a year later, 2 former police officers were convicted with the murder. This series of events has sparked a political movement that remains, and it's left a shadow over Brazilian politics that has caused many to wonder where its priorities should be placed. On the campaign trail, Jair Bolsonaro stayed silent on this matter, in a country where in the past decade, its richest oil company executives, as well as many politicians, including 2 former presidents, have gone under criminal charges and many times to jail, the Brazilian people grow more and more heated under a greenhouse effect of tension. While the president continues to focus on pension reform and other forms of legislation, he continually refuses to comment more on matters pertaining to Franco, and it would seem bizarre from a political stance to not at least acknowledge or condemn the crime. In March of 2019, when a suspect in the murder was apprehended, this image started to go viral of Bolsonaro pictured with one of the police officers allegedly responsible. The president stated that he's posed with thousands of police officers. But Franco hasn't been the only victim of politically motivated violence in Brazil. Prior to his election, in an Independence Day parade, a rally for his campaign, Bolsonaro was attacked too, and barely escaped with his life.
O que você acha do Bolsonaro?
Para ele quer acabar com o tráfico. Quer acabar com o tráfico é uma coisa que é impossível nesse mundo. Eu tenho o tráfico de droga, a cocaína. Hoje em dia eu não considero mais como um vício. Ela é um vírus. Ela é um vírus que estourou no país todo. Quem não usa a cocaína depende dela para sobreviver.
If Brazilian police can stop drug dealing in the streets, that's one thing, but what about house to house, door to door? Musinga alone has a population of 100,000, and that's just a little under the population of Flint, Michigan. Many feel that the conflict is just pointless. For obvious reasons, cartel members want it to stay that way.
Qual é o motivo da polícia ocupar a região? Ninguém vai matar trabalhador, ninguém vai roubar material aqui, que é nós mesmos aqui fazer obra na favela. Não tem necessidade de botar a polícia aqui dentro, não. Eles estão querendo usar a obra de habeas corpus para querer acabar com o tráfico, coisa que é quase impossível nesse mundo.
Quer dizer que se a polícia entrar de alguma maneira para dar início a essas obras...
A bala vai comer, vai morrer polícia, vai morrer bandido, e o crime não vai parar, porque se sair nós vai entrar outro e a bala vai comer do mesmo jeito, meu amigo.
From this angle, Rio de Janeiro doesn't seem like a terribly bad place to be, with gold sandy beaches and good weather. And that's true. There is more to Brazil than its crime. Brazil brought the world of Formula 1 Ayrton Senna, who was either one of the best or the best F1 driver in the world, depending on the nationality of who you're talking to. In fact, sports are probably one of Brazil's major calling cards. In the history of the FIFA World Cup, Brazil's national football team is the most successful, winning 5 times in 1958, 1962, 1970, 94, and 2002. And the esports market in Brazil is growing at a rapid pace, particularly in games like Counter-Strike and Rainbow Six Siege. Many Brazilian teams have gone on to compete in these respective games at international championships, time after time. Brazil is standing at the precipice of history in the 21st century, and the election of one man may either drive it to new heights or another historical valley. But the Brazilian public seems optimistic at large, even if somewhat divided. Order and progress. Jair Bolsonaro has made it clear that his country will not be ignored.
Gente, acabar com a ideologia que defende bandidos e criminaliza policiais.
Ok, então vamos lá, gente. Tu quer a paz? Eu quero também. Mas o Estado não tem direito de matar ninguém, aqui não tem pena de morte, mas segue o pensamento. O desejo de matar de um capitão Nascimento que sem treinamento se mostra incompetente.